This is Harry Davies for MMA Latest News, and I spoke to Michelle Waterson ahead of her fight against Tecia Torres at UFC 218. I firstly began by asking Michelle about her time away from the cage.
It's good, anytime you're not fighting, you should still be training, you should still be learning and getting better. Those are actually the times where I feel like you can learn the most, because you're not training for any specific game plan, you're just training to get better. So that's what I did. We had so much going on this year after my fight with Paige. Did the ESPN, we went out to Singapore to do some media for the UFC. We were in Mexico. We got to go to a bunch of cool spots. And then I over the summer I was on MTV's reality show, The Challenge, which is really cool. Got to raise some awareness for one of my favorite charities, MVP, and then bringing it back home, training for this fight.
So that charity MVP, then, I've not actually heard about that. What do they do?
MVP is a charity, and it stands for Merging Vets with Players. And their main focus is taking people that are coming out of the military and struggling with adjusting to the civilian world, the civilian life, because it's completely different. And whether you're dealing with something physical or mental that's a disability to you, sometimes it's hard to just get over those humps. And when you leave the military, you kind of leave a brotherhood or a community behind, and MVP offers that community for those veterans. And it also brings professional athletes into the picture, because I feel like they deal with a lot of the same stuff when they decide to retire, because when you're a part of something bigger than yourself, when you retire from that or leave from that, you lose a sense of yourself, and it's just a place that creates community for those people.
Well, that's good to hear, actually. I mean, is your husband ex-military? Because I didn't know if that was something that related to that at all or not.
Yes, I have. Everybody in my family's military. My husband was in the Air Force for 6 years. He was a MP. My dad was in the military in the Army. My brother was in the Army, still is, I think, in National Guard. My grandpa was in the Army before, or he was in the Air Force before it was the Air Force. He was a pilot for World War II. My brother-in-law, my cousins. So I come from a long line of military family.
So it's a charity that's quite close to heart.
Sure.
Yeah. So on to the fight stuff then, and just going back to April, which was the fight with Rose. I've not seen this covered yet, but we hear it a lot with people that get knocked down. Is how much of the fight do they remember? It wasn't like it was a knockdown and then you were out straight away. I just want to know, were you functioning fine after this, or was it kind of like survival mode after she got knocked down?
There are. I remember everything. There was a point where I knew that I got hit, but I didn't know what I got hit with. I remember getting hit, and then I remember fighting off the choke. But I do remember anything. They took me to the hospital afterwards. I didn't get any concussions or anything like that. So they were worried about me having maybe a broken orbital from the ground pound. But I was fine. Just a little heartbroken.
It's interesting you say about the heartbroken thing, because I was gonna ask. I remember watching. I think it was just before that fight. It was the documentary came out, Fight Mom, and I was watching it. It was when you lost to Horacio Tiburcio, and Araya was she was more distraught than you was, and it was interesting because obviously the loss against Namajunas, she's a bit more mature now. Did she take it did she take losses better now that she's a bit older? Or?
Yeah, she. I think the biggest thing with her is just concerned about my safety. When she was younger, she really didn't know what was going on, but now, I didn't get to see her till midnight because I was in the hospital. And the first thing she said to me was, the first thing she asked me was if I was okay. So she understands. She knows what it is,
Yeah, I see. Going on to this fight, I think something that people don't realise is this isn't the first time you were supposed to fight Tecia. It was on the McGregor-Aldo card, which is almost 2 years ago now, which is quite crazy how fast time goes.
It is.
I just want to know, like, because obviously I think it was like, that fight was announced September time and you had to withdraw in like November, so it was 2 months of camp. Has like the preparation for that camp differed much to the one to this camp, given it's 2 years apart?
I think I've just matured a lot as a fighter. I was going through a lot of things back then. My first fight in the UFC, I broke my hand, and after that, it broke 3 more times. And so that's what I was dealing with, and that's why I had to pull out of the fight, because I broke my hand for the 3rd time. And so now I'm just a more mature fighter. I kind of roll with the punches. I understand how it is. You have to be able to be comfortable in the chaos, and sometimes, with all the media, being signed to the UFC, being on a big card, dealing with all the outside pressures, it's easy to get distracted. And I think for me, it's been a learning experience, and I've learned how to be comfortable with the chaos and really accept it and allow it to make me stronger.
Okay, yeah, that's good to hear. A bit out of conversation in this topic of the fight, is the UFC's just added a 125-pound weight class for women. And obviously it doesn't really relate to you because you used to fight at atomweight, and I'm sure you're comfortable at this weight class. But, like, would you like to see, or would you even like to see, like, a 105 class? I don't think that's something that'd happen, but are you, like, comfortable now at the weight class, given maybe you put on a bit more muscle mass and stuff compared to your earlier days?
I definitely like fighting at straw weight. I feel like I can focus more on my training and less on cutting weight. I'm able to hold my muscle more, which allows me to work my wrestling and my grappling a lot more. I feel like I have a little bit more oomph behind my punches. And I'm just getting older, and your body changes as you get older. But I do think it's important for the UFC to add more weight classes to the women's division. It's just going to allow the girls to flourish. And, just like the men's, there's all sorts of women out there that are wanting to fight. They just need a place and a platform to do so. And, for women, there should be more weight classes, because our bodies aren't really made to cut weight. Where our bodies are made to hold on to the weight, and so just give us a place to perform, and we'll come and we'll show up. Mm-hmm. I promise. I guarantee you, every woman every girl that I know that has gotten into the UFC are extremely grateful, and they just want to put on a good show. They train just as hard as the men do. So.
Yeah, it's interesting you said about the women's bodies aren't designed, because that's something that Beck Rawlins, she just had made her debut at 125, and she said the exact same thing. Like, I don't think people realise that when they speak about weight cutting, which brings me on to what I was going to ask you about weight cutting, was it's so controversial, like, all these extreme weight cuts with people passing out before fights and this crazy stuff. I was going to ask you, with the addition of new weight classes and even, like, stricter guidelines, do you think there'll always be, like, extreme weight cutting no matter what they do?
I don't know, because once you reach the highest level, you have to try to get every advantage that you can. I understand that if you can be the bigger fighter, and that's going to be an advantage for you come fight night, then you need to try to get that advantage, especially when you're fighting, the top level guys. Whatever advantage you can have, the better. But there comes a point when it no longer is an advantage and is a disadvantage. It slows you down. You can't rehydrate. You're dehydrated, which means you're more susceptible to concussions. So there's pros and cons, and you have to be able to ride the line really well. You have to understand your body, and that's part of being a professional is knowing how far to take that line,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's something I ask quite a lot of people is, I spoke to Tim Means recently, and he spoke to me about a really bad weight cutting story that he had. And given that you've always fought at 105 and 115, it seems like quite a natural weight class for you. It seems like you wouldn't have any, I was going to ask you, do you have any? But I kind of suspect the answer would be no, because you seem like someone who walks around and doesn't really have to cut much weight for your fights.
I struggled quite a bit, my last couple of fights at 105. It was rough. I mean, after my last fight at 105, the doctor would not release me after the weigh-ins because he couldn't find my pulse for a whole hour.
Really? Wow.
Like that's how low my blood pressure was because I had cut so much weight. I think I cut like 12 pounds of water weight. So yeah, it's not healthy. You have to learn how to do it the healthy way. And now I feel like I'm healthy. I'm strong. Like I said, I just went for a run today. You know, it's fight week. I'm still drinking a gallon and a half a day. I'm not dehydrated and I'm not depleted. So it's all good.
Yeah, good. Interesting you said about that, because obviously 105, it's only £10 extra difference, but that £10 is such a big amount when you're cutting weight and stuff. And I was going to ask about a teammate of yours who's got a really big fight soon that everyone was criticising for not being able to make 135, and that's Cyborg. And Holm Cyborg, what a fight that would be. Obviously it's December 30th. A lot of people, I'm sure you know how how Holm will win, but a lot of people just don't see Holm winning this fight. I think she got a very big chance of doing it given her style. But like, I was wondering people say, how do you see Holly Holm doing the impossible? I don't really class it as the impossible, but do you think she should be like the favourite in this fight or not?
It's always the impossible until it's done.
Yeah.
You know, and Holly was the one to shut down Ronda, so I do believe that she can be the one to shut down Cyborg. The thing with Cyborg is that she is a big person, you know, for the 135-pound weight class. But they're not fighting 135, they're fighting at 145. Holly is, you know, she's down to fight at either weight class, and she just, and she's fought, I believe she's fought even heavier than that in boxing.
Yeah.
And in boxers, they hit hard.
Yeah.
They don't hit like MMA fighters. You get hit by a boxer and it's way different. So it's not like Holly's not used to getting hit hard, you know? So that's another thing people don't realize either. Holly's coming from the boxing world where they basically stand in front of each other and trade. Holly knows what she's getting into. She wouldn't do it unless she didn't believe in herself, unless she didn't think that she could win, that she could win. And I just think stylistically, Holly does have a great chance of winning. Yeah, I don't know. As far as, Cyborg, she's just a big girl.
Yeah.
You know, she's big. Even at 145, she's really lean. But Holly's ready for the challenge, and I think that Holly's really good at taking advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves, and she's always been able to perform under the lights, so I'm excited for her.
I think what makes it really interesting is I think Holly's, well, from what we've seen of her, is best when she's fighting on the back foot, and we've never really seen Cyborg do anything else apart from fighting on the front foot, so it kind of makes for an interesting thing. Like, it almost plays right into Holly's advantage, which I think will almost bring out the best of her in this fight, kind of, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So it brings me on to ask you about your fight with Tecia, and it's an interesting thing I was going to ask is, you almost forget that you two are fighting because there's not a word about it online. It seems like there's no bad blood. You don't even say it. There's not one bad word exchanged between you two at all. And it's almost like we see so many people, this like fake beef nowadays, just to make the fights, like, give that hype around them. Like, do you even think you don't need? Do you think you need to hate your opponent to like fight them, or like it almost seems like there's no need for it? Do you know what I mean?
You know, everybody's different. Everybody gets riled up in their own ways. I wish I was a better, shit talker, but I'm not. If I was a good shit talker, I would do it because it's entertaining.
Yeah.
But I'm not good at it, and I have no problems with Tecia. I think she's, she has a traditional martial arts background, same as me. We both are respectful of our opponents. I'm respectful of her skills and abilities. But at the end of the day, I do want to beat her. She's standing in the way for me to get back to that title contention, and so I have to beat her. And I feel like my fighting style is entertaining enough that I don't have to talk shit.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask you, obviously we're not looking ahead to anything, but people in your division, like, you got the likes of Andrade, who she just beat Gadea, which no one expected. Obviously the title change, Cynthia Calvillo's like pushing up the ranks. It almost seems like because you haven't fought since April, people are leaving your name out of the conversation. And I was thinking, like, with this win over Tecia, like you planned to, do you think, obviously we could say maybe a title shot's a bit early, but like, do you think it sets up a fight, maybe like a rematch with you and like Rose? I don't know, because obviously she's the champion now, but maybe like it's hard to see where you go from here. Do you think a title shot for you is too soon after this, or do you just want to keep working your way up the division?
I'd love a rematch with Rose. I've always wanted a rematch with Rose ever since the fight ended, regardless of on the title or not, just for my own sake. But whatever happens as long as I'm climbing up the ladder is most important to me.